Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Green Hack. Imagine walking through your garden and noticing an empty corner. No flowers, no shrubs, no decorations, just open space. What would your first instinct be? For many gardeners across America, the answer comes quickly. Plant something there. Add color, add texture, add another flower bed. After all, why waste valuable space? A garden is supposed to be full of life, and an empty area can feel unfinished. It can feel like a project waiting to happen. That reaction is completely understandable. Gardening in America often celebrates abundance. More flowers create more color. More plants create more visual interest. More variety creates a stronger impression. When people look at an empty space, they often see potential. They see an opportunity to improve something. They see room for one more beautiful plant. But what if a Japanese garden designer looked at that same empty corner and came to the opposite conclusion? What if the empty space was not a problem at all? What if it was already doing exactly what it was supposed to do? That idea sounds strange at first because most of us are taught to judge a garden by what is in it. We notice flowers, we notice trees, we notice water features and decorations. We rarely notice the spaces between them. Yet in many Japanese gardens, those spaces are just as important as the objects themselves. This difference begins with a simple question. What is the purpose of a garden? For many American homeowners, a garden is often designed to create visual enjoyment. Beautiful flowers attract attention. Colorful landscapes make a property feel welcoming. Full flower beds create a sense of richness and success. There is nothing wrong with this approach. Some of the most beautiful gardens in America are built on exactly these principles. Many Japanese gardens pursue a different kind of beauty. Instead of asking how much can be added, they often ask how much can be removed. Instead of filling every available area, they carefully protect certain spaces from being filled at all. The goal is not emptiness for its own sake. The goal is balance. Imagine listening to music where every instrument plays constantly without pause. At first it might sound exciting. Eventually it becomes exhausting. The pauses matter. The quiet moments matter. Without them, the music loses its shape. Many Japanese garden designers think about space in a similar way. The empty areas are not missing something. They are creating room for everything else to be appreciated. This is where the comparison becomes fascinating. Americans often see empty space as an opportunity. Japanese gardens often see it as a feature. One perspective asks, what can I add here? The other asks, what happens if I leave it alone? Neither perspective is wrong. They simply lead to very different landscapes. The difference becomes easier to understand when we look at a common gardening situation. Imagine a flower bed with a few gaps between plants. Many gardeners immediately begin planning what to put there next season. More flowers seem like the obvious solution. The space feels incomplete. Yet in many Japanese gardens, a designer may intentionally leave part of an area open. The space allows nearby elements to breathe. It prevents the eye from becoming overwhelmed. It creates contrast, and contrast may be one of the most important ideas in this entire video, because what looks empty to one gardener may look perfectly balanced to another. The same open space that appears unfinished in one culture may be considered essential in another. The question is not whether the space contains something. The question is whether the space contributes something. That is where the real story begins. Because once you start paying attention to empty space, you begin noticing it everywhere. And the first place it becomes impossible to ignore is in the way many American gardens are designed compared to many Japanese gardens. Once you begin paying attention to empty space, it becomes surprisingly easy to spot the different priorities behind garden design. Walk through many American neighborhoods, and you will notice a common pattern. Homeowners often take pride in making every part of their landscape attractive and productive. Empty areas become opportunities. A bare corner might receive a new flower bed. An unused section of lawn might become a planting area. A gap between shrubs may eventually be filled with seasonal flowers. The garden evolves through addition. Each year brings something new. Each improvement adds another layer of color texture, or visual interest. This approach makes perfect sense. Most gardeners enjoy growing things. They enjoy experimenting with new plants. They enjoy seeing visible results from their work. When a space appears empty, filling it feels like progress. The garden becomes richer, more complete, more alive. In many ways, this mindset reflects a broader American appreciation for productivity. If a space can do more, why not let it do more? But this is where many Japanese gardens begin following a very different path. Instead of treating empty space as something waiting to be improved, they often treat it as something worth protecting. To many Western visitors, this can feel surprising. Why intentionally leave part of a garden open when another beautiful plant could be placed there? Why dedicate valuable space to gravel, moss, stone, or simply open ground? The answer becomes clearer when you consider how people actually experience a landscape. Imagine entering a garden where every square foot contains flowers, decorations, shrubs, and visual details competing for attention. At first, the space may feel exciting. There is always something to look at. Yet after a while, the experience can become tiring. The eye jumps from one object to another without ever finding a place to rest. Now imagine entering a garden where certain areas remain intentionally simple. A stretch of raked gravel, a patch of moss, an open space beside a stone lantern. Suddenly the surrounding elements appear stronger. A single tree becomes more noticeable. A carefully shaped shrub attracts more attention. The eye slows down. Instead of scanning everything at once, it begins appreciating individual details. This idea is often described as negative space, but the term can be misleading. It sounds as though the space contains nothing. In reality, it performs an important function. It creates contrast. It provides balance. It directs attention. Without it, many of the garden's most beautiful features would lose part of their impact. Think about a painting hanging on a wall. The frame matters. The empty wall around it matters too. If every inch of the wall were covered with decorations, the painting would become harder to appreciate. The same principle applies to gardens. Sometimes what surrounds an object is just as important as the object itself. This is why some of the most admired Japanese gardens contain surprisingly little. Visitors often expect complexity. They expect countless flowers and elaborate displays. Instead, they encounter simplicity. A few carefully placed stones, a single tree, open areas that seem almost untouched. At first glance, the garden may appear less dramatic than a colorful flower-filled landscape. Yet the longer visitors stay, the more powerful the experience often becomes. The difference is not that one garden contains more beauty than the other. The difference is how beauty is presented. Many American gardens create impact through abundance. Many Japanese gardens create impact through restraint. One captures attention by offering more to see. The other captures attention by helping people notice more clearly. And perhaps the most surprising part is that empty space often makes a garden feel larger rather than smaller. This seems completely backward. Common sense tells us that adding more plants should make a landscape feel richer. Yet when every area is filled, the garden can begin feeling crowded. Boundaries become harder to see. Individual features blend together. Open space creates separation. Separation creates clarity. Clarity creates a sense of scale. Imagine standing in front of two gardens of exactly the same size. One is packed with flowers, decorations, and dense plantings from edge to edge. The other contains carefully arranged plants surrounded by areas of open space. Many people are surprised to discover that the second garden often feels larger, not because it contains more land, but because it contains more breathing room. And that breathing room may be the most valuable feature of all, because the real purpose of empty space has very little to do with gardening. It has everything to do with attention. The less a garden demands your attention, the more attention you often choose to give it. The less it overwhelms you, the more details you begin to notice. What appears empty from a distance often becomes rich with meaning when viewed more carefully. This is where many visitors experience an unexpected shift. They stop asking what is missing from the garden. They start asking what the empty space is doing. And once that question appears, the entire landscape begins to look different. Suddenly, the open areas no longer feel unfinished. They feel intentional. They feel necessary. They become part of the design rather than gaps within it. And that realization leads to an even more interesting question. If empty space can change the way we experience a garden, what else can it change? Because some of the most important lessons hidden inside Japanese gardens have very little to do with plants, stones, or design. They have everything to do with the way people experience their own lives. One of the most surprising things about empty space is that it often helps people see more rather than less. At first, that sounds impossible. Most of us assume that more flowers, more decorations, and more visual features automatically create a better experience. Yet there is a reason many people walk through a crowded space and remember very little about it afterward. Their attention is being pulled in too many directions at once. Everything is asking to be noticed. As a result, nothing receives complete attention. Many Japanese gardens approach this problem differently. Instead of constantly adding new points of interest, they carefully control how many things compete for attention at the same time. A visitor may stand in front of a landscape containing only a few major elements: a tree, a stone, a pathway, an open area of gravel or moss. At first glance, there seems to be less to observe. Yet after a few moments, something interesting happens. Details begin emerging that might otherwise go unnoticed. The shape of a branch, the texture of a stone, the way light moves across the garden during the afternoon. The space encourages observation rather than consumption. This is one of the biggest differences between many American gardens and many Japanese gardens. American gardens often create excitement through abundance. Japanese gardens often create appreciation through focus. One approach offers many things to admire. The other encourages deeper attention toward a smaller number of things. Neither philosophy is right or wrong. They simply create different experiences for the visitor. Imagine visiting a museum. One room contains hundreds of objects displayed together. Another room contains a single masterpiece displayed with space around it. Which object are you more likely to remember an hour later? Most people would choose the second room. The empty space surrounding the object helps define its importance. Japanese gardens often apply the same principle to landscapes. Space is not wasted. Space is directing attention. This may explain why some visitors leave Japanese gardens with a feeling they struggle to describe. They may not remember every plant they saw. They may not remember every stone or pathway. Instead, they remember how the place made them feel: calm, focused, unhurried. The garden provided something increasingly rare in modern life. It gave their attention room to settle. And perhaps that is why this conversation eventually moves beyond gardening. Empty space exists in more places than we realize. Consider how many people fill every available moment of their day. Background noise, constant activity, endless notifications, continuous entertainment. Much like a crowded garden, modern life often leaves very little room for pause. Silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Empty time begins to feel unproductive. We develop the same instinct many gardeners have when they see an open area. We immediately look for something to fill it. Yet some of the most meaningful experiences in life happen during moments that are not filled at all. A quiet morning on a porch, a peaceful walk through a neighborhood, a few minutes spent watching birds in the backyard, a conversation that is allowed to breathe without interruption. These moments rarely demand attention. They simply allow attention to exist. This is where the lesson of empty space becomes surprisingly relevant. The value of space is not what it contains. The value of space is what it allows. In a garden, it allows balance. It allows focus. It allows individual features to be appreciated more deeply. In life, it allows reflection. It allows rest. It allows us to notice things we would otherwise miss. Perhaps this is why many people begin appreciating these ideas more as they grow older. When we are younger, we often measure success by accumulation. More achievements, more possessions, more activity, More experiences. Over time, many people discover that value is not always created by adding. Sometimes value is created by leaving room. Room for relationships. Room for quiet moments. Room for appreciation. A garden can become a gentle reminder of that truth. The most beautiful landscape is not always the one containing the greatest number of plants. Sometimes it is the one where every element has enough space to be fully appreciated. The same may be true for many other parts of life. And that brings us back to the question we started with. What should happen when you find an empty corner in your garden? Many American gardeners will continue seeing opportunity. Many Japanese garden designers will continue seeing value and restraint. Both perspectives have merit. Both can create beautiful spaces. The goal is not to decide which approach is superior. The goal is to understand what each approach teaches us. Americans often see empty space as an opportunity. Japanese gardens often see it as a feature. One asks, what can be added? The other asks, what can be preserved? Together, they remind us that good design is not simply about filling space. It is about understanding the purpose of space itself. The next time you walk through your garden, pause for a moment before deciding what needs to be planted next. Look at the open areas. Notice what they are already doing. Notice how they shape the surrounding landscape. Notice how they guide your attention. You may discover that some spaces are not waiting to be filled at all. Perhaps the most valuable part of a garden is not always what grows there. Perhaps it is the room that allows everything else to shine. Thank you for spending time with us here at The Green Hack. If this video changed the way you think about empty space, let us know in the comments. Do you prefer a garden filled with color and activity, or do you appreciate landscapes that leave room to breathe? We would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And next time, we will explore another surprising difference between American and Japanese approaches to home and garden design. Until then, take a look at the spaces you usually ignore. They may be doing more than you ever realized.